In March of 2019, flying under the radar for most people, Europe's biggest theme park opened its gates to the public. It was home to 26 major rides, including 17 roller coasters spanning across 200 full-sized football fields worth of space. It also boasted an inconceivable 2,117 smaller rides, stages, and attractions, all at a cost of $800 million. This is Wonderland Eurasia. Or at least it was, as less than a year after opening, the park closed, never to reopen again. Hundreds of attractions were left to rot in various states of disrepair, with many of the coasters and structures still standing to this day. This is the rise and fall of Wonderland Eurasia. The year is 2012. The mayor of Ankara, the capital city of Turkey, had a vision to put his city on the world map by building a supersized theme park on an area of 1.3 million square meters, previously used as farmlands and a public zoo. This would be called Ankapark. The park had funding ready to go and started construction just a year later in 2013. The first year saw groundworks completed and the first rides would begin construction towards the end of 2014. So far, everything was running on schedule. 2 rides had even begun testing: the Ferris wheel and Lightspeed, an intimate multi-inversion coaster. Once cleared, they invited the general public to ride the rides for free in an attempt to build public interest and support for the contentious theme park. And contentious it was. Ankapark was the brainchild of former mayor of Ankara, Mile Göcek. Now, criticism started rather early for Göcek's project, as he claimed the park would see 10 million guests through its gates every single year. Not a hugely ambitious number, but Ankara sees under 5 million tourists per year and only has a population of 5.1 million people, meaning he expected every single person who stepped foot in Ankara to visit the theme park. Likewise, in the middle of the construction period of 2017, Göcek became the subject of a criminal corruption investigation due to his dealings with public fundings, including the funding for Ankapark. Construction would slowly plod along at inconsistent paces, meaning some rides were finished years before the park would officially open. A few of these rides and attractions and roller coasters sat stagnant for upwards of 5 years, exposed to the elements, and with no maintenance conducted, they literally started to rust before the park saw even its first guests. Despite the original construction costs being estimated at $183 million, by the time it opened, that had absolutely ballooned out to $801 million. But the opening was just around the corner. After being delayed due to reported safety concerns, a wonderful start, the park opened its gates to the public on March 21st, 2019. Up until a month before this opening, it was still being referred to as Ankapark. It wasn't until just a week before the opening date that they decided to change the name to what was now known as Wonderland Eurasia. Guests were greeted to an absolutely baffling experience. The park was gigantic, over a kilometer across, and was packed with rides that looked ready to ride but weren't even open yet. According to the park, they were home to 26 large rides, including 17 roller coasters, and a whopping 2,117 smaller rides, stages, and interactive elements. Now, we have no idea how they came up with this number, and they must have been counting things like the animatronic dinosaurs as individual attractions that were littered all around the park. Unlimited rides at the park would cost you around $20, and the issue was many of the rides within had not actually been signed off by the manufacturers, and a large amount would never even open to guests. The rides that were open all lacked in quality and theming. It looked okay at first, but became more lackluster and bizarre the longer you looked. The attractions were split across multiple areas, including the dinosaur jungle area of the park, which hosted a 70-meter tall animatronic dinosaur, one of the largest of its kind. And other rides were contained within a number of giant tents designed to house indoor attractions so that at any time of the year, hot or cold, there was something for people to ride and enjoy. Ultimately though, a lot of them just ended up looking like blank warehouses or absolute fever dreams once inside. The park was filled with attractions from reputable and not as reputable manufacturers, fairground rides, coin-operated amusements, and more, and all of them were seemingly slapped down with no rhyme or reason. People had barely any reason to come in the first place, and if they came once, they definitely weren't coming back. Of course, the biggest draw on paper should have been the 17 roller coasters, which would have put it in the top 3 parks in the world by number of coasters. At least it would have been if they all had opened. Of the 17 roller coasters constructed, only 9 of them ever actually opened to guess, with 2 of them being wacky worms. An Intamin Jet Rescue coaster, a Zempala Air Force, 2 Wild Mouse coasters, a terrifying-looking SBF Visa Tower coaster, and more would never open for a variety of reasons. And of the coasters that did open, other than the Lightspeed Intamin Multi-Inversion coaster, none of them were really all that special. The park went for quantity over quality, and it definitely didn't pay off. Now there is an old saying, build it and they will come. Despite their best attempts to create the Turkish equivalent of Disneyland, that was their words, not ours, people just weren't interested. The operator behind Wonderland Eurasia struggled to keep up with the immense costs associated with such a large and ambitious venture. In the end, they were unable to afford staff wages or even the electricity bill. They desperately tried to attract more visitors by reducing ticket prices to hopefully get more tourists and locals on board, but ultimately nothing worked. Less than a year after opening, the park's closure was announced on February 12, 2020. Sadly, around 100 people found themselves unemployed. Only one security guard remained on site to keep an eye on the park. Now, political critics saw the park as one of the biggest symbols of waste by the mayor's ruling party. Ankara's urgent need was not for a Disneyland, it was transport, said Texan Karaskis Kandin, who heads the Chamber of Architects Ankara branch, and I apologize, my Turkish names are not very good, but they pointed out that the capital already had a large amusement park. This just wasn't necessary. Ultimately, the writing was on the walls from the beginning. The project was idiotically ambitious for a market that had little demand for what it was providing. Despite their hope to attract millions of tourists every year, I think the fact that this entire project had flown under the radar for even our business dedicated to travel and theme parks speaks volumes. Around June of 2022, after a 2-year legal battle, a court ruled transfer control of Ankapark to the new city council run by the new political opposition of the original mayor of Ankara. The dinosaur models for which the park was famous were falling apart in various states of disrepair and lie strewn around the abandoned weed-covered area of the humble size of 200 football fields. The Ankara Council surveyed residents on what should be done about the park, and the survey showed that most people wanted the site to be redeveloped into a green area populated by trees and trails that everybody could enjoy, not just ticket holders. Today, the park employs 8 full-time security guards, but is still as closed as ever, as Wonderland Eurasia has become a hotspot for urban exploration. Less than 5 years after closing, it looks as if it's been abandoned for decades. The park is currently slowly rotting away as the city officially decides what to do with it, becoming a gigantic reminder to the citizens of the governmental mistakes of the past. It seems every year we hear about a project that will be the Disneyland of insert place here, but there is a reason that Walt's home park in Anaheim is not the Wonderland Eurasia of California. It is possible to go too large, to underestimate your audience, and to overestimate your importance in the industry. Ankapark, in no circumstances, would have ever survived. Its sheer size was always its downfall. We sometimes talk about Hong Kong Disneyland as being this huge mistake for opening too small, but on the other side of things, there is a reason why sometimes these projects exist at that scale. Because the other end does not always mean success. It's a fine balance, and it's understanding your audience. But what are your thoughts? Is this a park that you would have been interested in visiting, or do you just think it was a waste of time for everybody involved? For ReviewTyme, I'm Dom. Thanks for watching.